Good morning. So we've reached the top of the hour, at 10 o'clock. So I'm going to make a start. Hopefully everyone that's going to be joining us has already joined us. Obviously we normally get a few late stragglers, but hopefully I won't miss too much in this starting part. So good morning and welcome. I'm Eddie Felmer from CommScope Ruckus. I still find that a little bit difficult to say compared to just saying Ruckus. But as you probably are aware, we became part of CommScope last year. So CommScope is really the only provider out there able to provide the whole infrastructure from the passive to the active side of the network. So if you haven't already taken a look at the CommScope products, so on the infrastructure side, so that's from fiber, structured cabling, that's distributed antenna systems, cellular systems as well, so in building and outdoor cellular systems as well. We're able to actually provide the end-to-end solution. And where I fit as a pre-sales engineer working in the UK pre-sales team, so along with several colleagues, we're looking after pre-sales for our distributors and our partners. And we fit into the Ruckus Enterprise Networking part of CommScope there. So predominantly we're looking after the network part, so that's for traditional Ruckus Wi-Fi and also the ICX switching that we took on board from the Brocade acquisition, or when Brocade acquired us there. So also on the call today, I have my colleague Sam Evans. So Sam's kind of sitting in as my wingman. So he's going to be taking Q&A and answering any Q&A as we're going through. He's probably also going to be running the timer as well, because sometimes I do ramble a bit, and I just want to make sure we kind of keep track in terms of time as well. So don't delay you into your lunch hour. So I'm not sure if you can actually see my video. So just in case you don't know me, have never seen me before, I've been at Ruckus for 13 years. So I was originally employee number 5 in EMEA, number 64 globally for Ruckus. So been here for a long time, predominantly working on the Wi-Fi wireless side of things. But if you haven't seen me before, my video should be showing, but if it's not, then you won't get to see me if you don't know me already. I'm actually going to stop my video because I'm working from my home office today, and my uplink is pretty low. It's a paltry 4.5 megabits per second. So not so much for the presentation, but especially when I get onto a demo part, don't want that being ruined by or eaten by the uplink video as well. So Sam, just a quick sound check. Just want to make sure you can hear me okay.
Yeah, loud and clear, Eddie.
Good, thank you, Sam. It's hopefully I haven't spent the last 2 minutes talking to myself. Right. So in terms of this session, it's divided into two parts. So the first part of it is PowerPoint. So hopefully not death by PowerPoint. So I've actually slimmed down. I was given originally 68 slides, so I've kind of slimmed that down significantly. Hopefully you've joined this call. I'm familiar with both of our products already at a reasonable level. So you're familiar with Unleash Controller Management or Cloud Controller Management, or both of those. So I'm not going to spend much time going into the details of what they do and the benefits of each and so on. This is really more about the recent additions of unified management. So the ability to be able to monitor and to some degree manage our ICX switches within these two different platforms. So that's really the main purpose of today. So the first part is presentation of about 45 minutes. And then that will be followed by a demonstration of both platforms and what you can actually see and do with in respect to monitoring and management of the ICX in these two different platforms. As I say, Sam, do please give me a nudge if I'm taking a bit of a long time anywhere and need to move on.
Got it.
Thank you. Good, do better than me. Is my slideshow? Oh, that's better. So just in terms of if you have any questions, then use the Q&A panel. So you should find that in your menu system to be able to actually post questions as we go through if anything pops up. We will pause at the end for any sort of Q&A as well at the end of this session. So if you have any sort of outstanding questions, we'll try and get around to those as well if Sam hasn't answered them as we've gone through. And as it mentions, the webinar is being recorded as well. So Purdycom will make that available to you if there's any parts you want to kind of go through a bit more at your leisure later on. So in this first part, what we're going to look at firstly is just a quick overview of Ruckus products and services, just to make sure that you're up to date with all of our products and services available and where they kind of fit with Unleashed and Cloud. We're then going to take a look at the ICX switch portfolio, so just a brief look at that. So at a high level, what switches are available. Again, I took out quite a bit of content. There were many slides going into detail on each of the ICX switches, but due to the time frame, we wouldn't have time to cover all that. So obviously all the data sheets are available on our website, so you can pull all those down for the entire switch product families or the individual switches within the product families as well. Take a look. We're going to then take a quick look at the Unleashed AP portfolio, so where we are today in terms of which APs are supported. Going to take a look at what was added in 200.8 and the 200.9 release. So the 200.9 release for Unleashed came out last week, and just take a quick look at the roadmap then. And then we're going to move on to the cloud and looking how it's actually unifying the network management together there for ICX switching. And again, look at recent feature enhancements and additions and also the roadmap. So we'll pause for a bit of Q&A there for any other questions that come up that have been unanswered, and then we'll move on to the demonstration. So hopefully have you well done before lunchtime. So just in terms of CommScope and who we are and really our mission statement, or maybe our purpose, whichever way you want to see it. As I mentioned, we are really the only vendor out there that can provide the end-to-end solution and connectivity for enterprise networking and campus networking as well, venue networking, wherever you see that actually fitting. So really we are the only company out there that provides everything from that layer one physical, including things like racking, right down to tools, fiber splicing tools and so on, through to the active parts of the network as well, and services that sit on top of that network. So whether your customers are looking to connect just Wi-Fi networks, connecting Wi-Fi and wired networks together using CommScope Ruckus equipment, or even cellular, as I mentioned, or in building systems using distributed antennas, deploying fiber, then we can provide all of that solution as a one-stop shop. And what we're about is these three kind of key messages. So it's about simplicity. So your customer networks and their environments are becoming more complex. There's more things going into their networks, and you need solutions that are actually built, purpose-built for this sort of unification to make those networks simpler to manage, easier for them to support them, deploy configurations, and so on. Second part is those networks need to be reliable. So in terms of operational, they have to be up 99.9999% of the time. And whether there's changes to the environment or the network because it's a planned or an unplanned change, those networks need to keep working reliably and servicing the user. And that's really what it's about. It's about the user experience. That's what the network's there for, is for servicing the users. So whether it's hospitality and it's a kind of a public network in a hotel, or whether it's in retail, for example, or whether it's in education, basically the networks are there to support those users and give them the best possible user experience. So they have to be reliable from the user experience perspective. And then adaptable means that obviously your customers are going to invest a lot of money into their networks, and they need to make sure that those networks are going to allow them to grow and change. So as the demands on the networks actually change, so that maybe things that they've planned ahead for the next 2 to 3 years in terms of new applications or services, or new applications and services that come along, or increases in the utilization of that network, or just general changes and moves, those networks need to be adaptable as well without incurring huge costs or having to do forklift upgrades to them. So that's really kind of what we're about, from a CommScope perspective. In terms of the Ruckus parts of the Ruckus networking side of it, so the portfolio obviously since my start 13 years ago is significantly increased. So we started off with our IPTV product family at that time, and MediaFlex APs. So it's been a pretty interesting journey to see all these new products and services being added to the portfolio. So due to time, I'm not going to go through these in any detail. You should be fairly familiar with all these different services and so on. But I will mention, for example, CloudPath, which is our network edge or network access security platform. So it allows onboarding typically of 802.1x client certificates to an 802.1x network, or potentially using dynamic pre-share keys or external dynamic pre-share keys on that platform. It's got good guest access in it. It's got some new policy controls in it as well. You can use CloudPath and deploy that with Unleashed. You can use that with Cloud Managed as well. So it's a network edge or network access security platform product that actually fits with all of our controller options. Next to that, we've got our old on-site Smart Cell Insight reporting, which also has some analytics, but we recently introduced our Ruckus Cloud Analytics platform. So that's really got two parts to it. One is the analytics side of it. We're going to take a look at this later. And the other part of that is the reporting side of it as well. So it really has built into it pretty well all the reports that Smart Cell Insight has, as well as the DataCube Explorer as well, that allows you to create your own custom dashboards and reports. So very, very powerful. So Ruckus Analytics is a bolt-on to Ruckus Cloud Managed Solutions. It doesn't support Unleashed, so it's only Smart Zone or Cloud that it supports there. We've got our location services through Spot. So, big market for that was retail. Retail's not the greatest of markets, but there are other opportunities for Spot and location services still, along with our IoT platform as well, potentially for location services and other value adds such as asset tracking, wayfinding, and so on. On the right-hand side, just a very quick mention of a couple of third-party tools. So Intangi Iris is it's effectively what we call a bill of materials building tool or BOM solution tool. So what that allows you to do is you've got a catalog of all the Ruckus products. You can drag and drop those into a workspace. You can configure those products, add all the options you need, whether that's optics, whether it's cables, whether it's licensing for APs if you pull in a smart zone. So it allows you to actually sort of visually create the network and build a bill of materials out of that. And it helps to ensure that you have all of the right items that you actually need. So you've got all the right SKUs, the right partners, part numbers, and all the right accessories, the right support, and everything else is added to those bills of materials. So if you're not already using Iris, then it's probably something you should take a look at. So you can sign up on their site, and it's free of charge to use for Ruckus partners. We actually pay the cost of use of that. The other one is Yagna, which is a cloud-based desktop planning tool. So we recently retired our Zone Planner, which was built around AirMagnet, and that's really been superseded by Yagna. So if you haven't taken a look at that and you do desktop planning, then Yagna, unfortunately, is not free, but you do get a 7-day trial with that. So do take a look at that if you are involved in doing desktop planning as opposed to sort of full on-site surveys and sort of real-time planning using Ekau or AirMagnet products. In terms of controller management, the ones that we're focused on today, obviously we have appliance controllers, we have virtual controllers in the form of Smart Zone, but today we're really focusing on the cloud managed and unleashed. So they're kind of fitting, well, I'll show you where they sort of fit into the market and the strategy. We've got our IoT suite as well. So both of these controller platforms support the IoT suite as well. It's definitely a growing market. We're seeing a lot more interest in applications. So things like perhaps in education or hotels, for example, things that like environmental monitoring. So you can actually monitor what the status of things like the CO2 levels and humidity and the temperature are in classrooms or in conference rooms, for example. And if the CO2 levels rise too much, you can have alarms generated. You could have interaction with building management systems to turn on the air conditioning or to open windows and so on, as well as wayfinding, asset tracking, other services as well that you typically get in IoT. There are a lot of different applications for that. So if you're not familiar with our IoT suite, do take a look. Switches we're going to look at on the next slide, so I won't cover that. And then obviously we've got the range of outdoor, indoor, and specialty access points, which I'm not going to cover in any great detail because hopefully you're already familiar with those, whichever management platforms you're using today. Oh, okay, Cloud Converge, sorry, I didn't see that little bit build. So in terms of just at a high level, positioning the sort of different types of controller. So we kind of have these two terms, lean IT versus muscular IT. So lean IT is typically organizations that have a few IT staff but basically look after all of the IT. So there's no kind of people dedicated to looking after security or after the network or after the Wi-Fi or anything like that. So it's organizations which are typically your primary, secondary educations. It's for smaller hotels, so the sort of boutique or independent hotels, any small to medium-sized sort of business typically, and places like retail as well. So anywhere that has a small IT team but is very lean, and they need a solution that's very easy to deploy, very simple to manage, intuitive to use, has good reporting and so on in there, then they can make that choice between Unleashed and Cloud Wi-Fi. And typically where Cloud Wi-Fi is a better fit is for multi-site deployments, because that's already inherently built into the product. So with Unleashed, you can deploy multi-site and overlay it with Unleashed Multi-Site Manager, which is a separate VM, but you have to license on a per AP basis. So you can have multi-site management with Unleashed, and also the app supports up to 10 sites as well if you want to use the app for managing Unleashed sites. But in reality, both do a very good job of single site deployments, and some customers have a preference for having, cloud managed. So although Unleashed doesn't have a controller as such, some customers do have a preference for cloud, and especially if you're competing against a Meraki or someone else playing out in that cloud space, they may prefer cloud for single site, but definitely for multi-site, cloud is a better solution, potentially than Unleashed, and will work out a lot cheaper as well. On the other side of that, we have the muscular IoT. So that's typically where the smart zone is playing. So that's places like the largest sort of brand hotels and chains. It is colleges and universities. It is the medium to larger enterprise customers and big campus deployments as well, and large public venues as well. So stadiums and places like that, large conferencing halls, exhibitions. So it's those where they have a need for more granular control, more features and functionality to some degree as well, and probably have a bit more specialization and a bit more network knowledge too. So just taking a quick look at the ICX switching portfolio and products. So these sit in families, if you're not already familiar with them, so they sit in product families. So on the left, we have the entry-level product family, which is the 7150, and it goes currently up all the way up to the right-hand side, the 7850. So a bit like with our AP models, if you look at, look like an AP like an R320, and then you've got today the R550, the R650, the R750, the R850, kind of from left to right in those model numbers. As they go up, they get more powerful, more powerful processors, support large numbers of users, and so on. So it's kind of the same here, left to right, in terms of the switch families. So from the entry level on the left of 7150, the further right you go, the more options for resilience and redundancy you get. So more likely to be able to have, power supplies, redundant power supplies and fans that are hot swappable, more layer free functionality, faster uplink speeds, faster port speeds as well there. So you start to see as you go to the right, you start to look at getting 40 gig or 100 gig uplinks and stacking ports there available. So it's just more functionality and more power further you go to right. So typically as you go from left to right, the deeper the switches sit within your network. So they'll potentially sit as, when you look at something like the 7250 or 7450, they may be seen as more premium access switches going into aggregation. And then you look at the 7650, maybe sort of premium aggregation or small core, and then 7750, 7850 is typically where you're going to be looking at backbone or core switching, and also top of rack applications. So something like the 7850 may be useful at sitting top of racks if you have racks full of lots of servers in a customer deployment. So that's typically how they pan out, sort of left to right. So obviously again, it's left hand side is cheapest, right hand side is most expensive and most powerful. And just, I guess, some highlights here. So in the 7150 product family, we have 24, 48 port PoE and non-PoE switches, but we also have the Z series. So the Z series, anyway, you see that is typically a multi-gig capable switch. So we have them, for example, in the 7650 as well. So the Z series, in terms of 7150, adds 2.5 gig E and higher PoE budgets there as well, and also does add some redundancy compared to the standard 24 and 48 port switches. We've also got outer closet switches, which is a bit of a funny term. I prefer to use desktop switches, but I got a 12, a 10, and an 8 port switch variant there. So 12 port is a standard sort of 12 1 gig ports with a couple of 10 gig uplinks on it. But we've also recently introduced a 10 port, which is multi-gig capable. So that does support like BT power, for example. If you have high power demands, it supports 2.5, 5 gig E ports on it and 10 gig E ports on it as well. So it's a pretty powerful little desktop switch. So where you may be using that, for example, is if you take somewhere like maybe a hotel or a school where they've got higher density areas, so that may be some conferencing areas, or it may be like the school hall, for example, where they're going to actually have a larger number of users than they typically have in the hotel rooms or the classrooms. So what you may do is you may only need to be putting in more powerful APs like the R750 or maybe even the R850. You may need to put in APs that require higher power or 2.5 or 5 gig uplinks to them, rather than deploying a sort of a 24 or 48 port switch that supports multi-gig. You can just deploy one of these 10 port switches here, so it's a lot more cost efficient. So that's really just a sort of a brief lineup. And just to be aware, Unleash supports all of our ICX switches. However, Cloud has got some specific restrictions on which switch families it supports, and that's just to do with the sort of the legacy in terms of the sort of the resources of CPU that were actually built into the existing switches. Not that they're underpowered, but just in terms of the actual sort of architecture in them, didn't lend themselves to actually being managed by our cloud solution. So I'll cover that in the cloud part. So I mentioned here about power requirements as well as multi-gig capable switches. There may be demands for much higher power than your old sort of traditional PoE and PoE plus, which drives up to 30 watts. So you may be seeing applications where you have to push 60 watts. So like our R850, for example. You may have cameras or other devices that need higher power than the 30 watts available. So amongst our range of switches there, we've got options to sort of suit all of those different types of power requirements as well as multi-gig. The switches as well come with a limited lifetime warranty, so a bit like our access points. The slight differences see as we go through this is, so lifetime warranty or limited lifetime warranty means that the original purchaser of the equipment, so the customer originally purchases it, and as long as they continue to use that, they're covered with this limited lifetime warranty. You get that on our access points as well, and on the appliance controller. The slight difference with the switching is that you actually get next business day advanced replacement included in that as well. So if a customer has buys an ICX 7150Z series switch today, and in 5 years' time that blows up the power supply or something goes in it, he'll actually be able to get next business day advanced replacement on that. So with that lifetime warranty is pretty good on the switches there. And that does include the power supplies and the fans in that lifetime warranty as far as hardware goes. But do note it excludes optics. So if you put in SFP pluses in various types of optics, it excludes that, and it also excludes LED failures. And the reason is that we actually pay like a kind of an insurance premium. I'm not sure what the correct term for it is, but every time we sell a switch, we pay a little bit of a premium, which is like a guarantee or a warranty on the switches that actually provides this next business day replacement. And things like the optics and LEDs are not covered under that. So if you want to have those covered, then you need to actually buy a next business day support contract to make sure they're covered, as they won't be covered under the lifetime warranty. In terms of software, that is covered as well. So you get access to be able to download latest software releases from the support site. You also get access to the online support portal. In terms of actually getting remote technical assistance from our tax center, by default, you get 90 days. So that's 8x5 telephone support for 90 days with the new product. You can optionally upgrade that to 3 years. I think there's also a 5-year SKU. Most people go with for 3 years for some reason. So you can upgrade that to 24/7 as a cost option if you want to. The little sort of caveat there is the 7250 actually comes with that 3 years telephone support 24/7 included. So kind of like a little bit of a weird one. I'm not sure why that came about, but in general, if you want 24/7 telephone support, then you'll need to actually buy the optional contract for that, or your customers will need to buy that. So always try and upsell the support to your customers. And just a little footnote at the bottom there is that the 8 port, the little desktop 8 port, there's 2 variants of that. The PT is a lower temperature, so it goes down to neg 40 to minus 40 degrees centigrade. So it's typically something that you might install as a switch into a roadside cabinet, for example, or somewhere else, or you might be switching into some sort of deep freezers in some sort of research institute. So just be aware that comes a 13-month warranty rather than limited lifetime warranty. Right, so just taking a look at the Unleashed portfolio. So just going to start off really because the main thing about, or the main updates to Unleashed as of late, apart from adding ICX monitoring sort of capability into it, is that it's sort of fully onboarded with the Wi-Fi 6 APs now. So as of version 200.9, which was released last week. And just some of the key points about Wi-Fi 6 or 802.11ax. Hopefully you're all pretty familiar and up to date with this now. Just some of the key points there. So OFDMA is a new way of making more efficient use of the actual spectrum reuse. So when an AP is sitting on a particular channel or set of channels where it's occupying some of the spectrum, if you want to do something like multi-user MIMO, for example, in the previous sort of releases in 802.11ac or Wi-Fi 5 as it's now known, that was actually done using multiple streams, so multiple radio streams. With OFDMA, what it basically does is it splits up the channel that the AP is using into what we call resource units, and it can allocate a number of resource units to every client. So it's a much more efficient way of using the spectrum to be able to actually use, if there's parts of the channel not being used, then you can actually reuse that for other clients at the same time. So a more efficient way of kind of doing multi-user MIMO than using spatial streams. But the downside to that is that you obviously have lower data rates. So with spatial streams, you've got more of a dedicated data rate to each client that's actually doing it. With OFDMA, you can support a lot more clients doing multi-user MIMO, but at a lower, potentially at a lower bandwidth or lower throughput. So a bit of a trade-off, but it does add efficiency to the utilization of the spectrum. So multi-user MIMO, the biggest, both in OFDMA and using spatial streams, the biggest advance here is that we also support now uplink multi-user MIMO. So previously, as part of Wi-Fi 5, it was downlink multi-user MIMO, so the AP could actually communicate with multiple clients at the same time. Now it actually supports uplink MIMO, if I can get my words out, where you can have multiple clients talking to the AP at the same time. And obviously, you have to have clients that are capable of doing this, but obviously it makes the network a lot more efficient in terms of capacity. So it improves the capacity by having, rather than tying up a channel to one client, you can have multiple clients communicating with the AP in uplink or downlink direction at the same time. It's part of Wi-Fi 6 as well, so there's been some improvements to power efficiency as well, so the way that power is managed, so it becomes more of a scheduled power management, and it means that the battery life on mobile devices like your smartphones and your tablets and so on, the laptops even, should last a lot longer. In terms of improving raw performance, you've got 1024-bit QAM, so that's quite a bit of a big improvement from 256-bit QAM. So this is just the number of symbols that's actually used for modulating the data onto the carrier wave. So the more symbols you have, the more data you can actually push, but it does require a good RF environment. So typically, that's only going to work in room in sort of environments that have got low sources of interference. Longer OFDM symbols. So this is about improving performance in indoor networks. So it actually kind of improves your capacity or your performance indoor networks. So you've got actually a longer transmit time for data. And outdoors, it helps to improve reliability because it actually gives more time when you have a lot of it may take more time due to multipath outdoors for some of the bits of multipath signal to reach the receiver. It gives more time for that to actually settle. So it gives you better reliability when you're doing sort of things like point-to-point links outdoors. The last one, BSS coloring. So this is just across different BSSs, gives you the ability to actually simultaneously transmit, even if you've got APs that are overlapping in spectrum, they can actually transmit at the same time. So improves your capacity and the sort of coexistence of your APs when you've got a high density deployment. So that's just really a bit of a quick roundup on Wi-Fi 6, and this is the product family that supported and unleashed 200.9. So previously, I think the only one on there in 200.8, we added the R750, but you can now see that the full product family for Wi-Fi 6 is supported. So that's indoor and outdoor APs as well that are Wi-Fi 6 capable. And of course, not forgetting, when you're working with Unleashed, I mean, we're going through a demonstration with the web interface later on, but as always, remember, it's got a pretty powerful mobile app as well. So you can do a lot of management. And as I mentioned, you can actually, as long as you have support on your Unleashed network, you can actually remotely manage up to 10 sites using the mobile app as well. So, if you have a small, small boutique hotel chain that deploys Unleashed, for example, the IT team can actually use the app to sort of do, monitoring and basic sort of configuration stuff via the app as well. And of course, it also supports now the ICX switching in there as part of a unified solution. So if your app's not up to date or you're not using it, then do take a look at that. Okay, I'm going to take a quick breath there. Any comments or questions there, Sam, that needs attention? Were you okay?
No, we're all clear for now, Eddie.
Okay, so moving on to the Cloud Unify bit, and how am I doing for time? Oh, better get a move on.
22.
Yep, got to move on. So just for any of you that have been working with Cloud, you may have noticed that the URLs to access Cloud have changed. So we've recently done a big migration. So, when we first developed our cloud hosted platform a few years ago, there were lessons to be learned from how it was deployed, how agile it was for adding new services, for scaling it up, and so on. So we've recently started moving our customers to the new cloud. So you may have, if you've got customers that are on cloud, they may have received notifications about migration from the old to the new pods. But basically, they'll be accessed by these new URLs. So depending on where you are, so for example, here we're typically using the EU ruckus.cloud instead of where we used to use cloud-eu ruckuswireless.com. So these are the new URLs that will actually be moved after customers have migrated. Any new customers, and certainly new customers for the last few months, will be put directly onto the new cloud-hosted platform. With Cloud, just like with Unleashed, there is a mobile app. So if you haven't already checked that out, do have a look at it. I mean, it is full of good information about sort of monitoring your network, being able to do some configuration and management, being able to add, as you can see there on the left, you can add switches, you can add APs from here quite easily. You can add guest passes here as well. So it's a really good, neat little app, for managing, monitoring your network, and it does include now the switching part of it as well, as you can kind of see underneath here. So it shows not only just the APs, but also the status of your switches. So do check that out if you haven't used it before. In terms of the portfolio for Cloud, these are all the APs that now are supported on the unified cloud. So, Wi-Fi 6 APs are all supported like they are for Unleashed. These are the range of indoor APs and also a range of outdoor APs that are supported. And as I mentioned earlier, these are the switches or the switch families that are currently supported on Cloud. So some of the old ones like the 7250, 7450, 7750, which are kind of the legacy Brocade switches aren't supported. It's only really the newer ones since since Ruckus got together with Brocade, and we released the new series of ICX switches, the new families. They're the ones that are actually supported by Cloud. So any new switches will be supported, but unfortunately those old legacy switches won't be supported. And again, as with Unleashed, it supports layer 2, layer 3 firmware images, and requires similarly sort of 8090, and it says specifically here 890D or later firmware to actually be managed by Cloud. So just looking at some of the key features. So we've added the Wi-Fi 6 APs. We've added the analytics and reporting. So hopefully, there's been lots of WebExes and stuff about the cloud and analytics and reporting that we have. And I mentioned that at the start of the presentation in the sort of software services. So whilst it doesn't work with Unleashed, it does work with SmartZone and Cloud Managed. And we're going to take a quick look at that during the demonstration, but it really is a very powerful tool. So it is bolt-on additional licensing from the analytics perspective. So just to be clear, it's kind of got these two parts to it. You've got the analytics stroke troubleshooting part. So you've got things like information about the clients and so on. So you've got analytics, network health, and troubleshooting, which is the subscription license. And then you've got the reporting, which is the traditional sort of reports that you had in our Smart Cell Insight or SCI product. They're actually bundled as the reporting tool within Cloud Managed. So you don't have to pay for the reporting part of it. You only pay for the analytics. I guess the other slight exception there is for reporting. There is this Data Cube Explorer that allows you to create custom reports and custom dashboards. That part of it is actually or falls under the analytics part, so that is a licensed part of it as well. But the general pre-canned reports are all available, so we'll take a look at those when we have a look at the demonstration. But very, very powerful tool, and really what the way that I position our cloud analytics is that it's like having an extra help desk operative that's there, 24/7, monitoring your wireless and your wired network. So some of the analytics for wired are roadmap items. So you get visibility of your ICX switches, for example, in reporting, but they're not sort of covered in the analytics part today, but that's coming later this year, I think. But basically, it's like having someone there monitoring your network and actually creating incidents, so like creating help desk tickets, so what the biggest problems are that you actually need to deal with without you having to filter through lots of reports or lots of log files or whatever it happens to be, and also helps you to sort of diagnose what the root causes of those may be. So a very powerful tool that we'll look at. We've added DHCP and NAT services on the AP, so you may be using the APs as gateways effectively for client devices. So typical sort of places may be retail or hotspot deployments, cafes, whatever it may be. Obviously not a great time for either of those types of markets at the moment, but nonetheless you may find that a useful service in Cloud to be able to do those DHCP and NAT services. And you can also set up a DHCP server specifically for guest Wi-Fi networks as well if you want to, rather than using your own DHCP service. MSP support is one of the big kind of topics as part of cloud developments. So this is where it allows you as the partner to effectively become a managed service provider using our cloud. So you can do things like brand some of the portal. You can You can put your own, support desk contact numbers for the support fields in there, and you can actually own licensing and resell licensing to your end user customers for it. And you get a dashboard. You can view visibility of the licensing, when it's going to expire, all this sort of stuff as well. So you kind of get like this MSP dashboard as part of that as well. So it's all about enabling you as partners, especially partners that don't want to go the kind of the whole hog and use their own smart zone as a managed service. This is a much simpler way of doing it. You're effectively providing managed service using our cloud, but you are the go-to, the go-to sort of point for that for your end user customers. So we're putting a lot of effort in terms of continuing to develop the MSP support offering to allow you to become more competitive in that market without having to host your own smart zones. Now get an audit log of configuration events. As I mentioned earlier, we've added Wi-Fi calling. We've enhanced the network creation wizard. So we've added things like scheduling. So if you want to have scheduled wireless LANs, that actually you can do that as part of the network wizard, for example, now. So it's always been pretty simple, but we've made it a little bit simpler. You can also now have scheduled updates. So when there's an update, you'll actually receive an email. The time frame when you receive that email, or you, as in your customers, if the end user license agreements with a customer, they'll receive an email to say that there's going to be an upgrade to the system. And the time scale of that they get it will depend on whether it's just a normal sort of feature update, or whether it's a patch update or a critical update. But what they'll do is, depending on the type of update, they'll get the ability to actually defer the update as well. And I seem to remember it was 2 weeks that you can defer it up to. Don't know if Sam's got any comment on that. I think it was 2 weeks that you effectively get allocated some time slots, so it'll actually notify you that there's a software update available, and if you want to defer it, you'll be provided with some time slots for when that update will actually happen. And of course, we've added visibility and management of our ICX switches, which is what this is about. But we've also added our APIs to it as well. So some pretty comprehensive API support like we have on the Smart Zone, so that you can actually start to build solutions that integrate with cloud, and whether that's for monitoring or whether that's actually for management and provisioning, using those APIs to do that. Those are roadmap features. So coming up for the end of this quarter, I think there's going to be 2 more releases before the end of this year. So support for the H550, adding our auto cell sizing feature. So this will automatically shrink the transmit power of APs when it's detecting that it's interfering with neighbors. So it's a feature we've had on Smart Zone for some time. Another feature we've had on Smart Zone for some time is Bonjour fencing. So Cloud has Bonjour Gateway, which is the ability to forward MDNS lookups between VLANs, but Bonjour fencing takes that to the next stage, where you can actually limit the visibility of MDNS-based devices or services to either the same AP or to one hop away from that AP. So rather than getting a list of 20 devices or 20 Apple TVs you can connect to, or Chromecast devices you can connect to, you'd only see like a limited list based on the AP you're connected to, or its one hop neighbors. Ability to do remote packet capture like on Unleashed. The addition of application policies. So this is one area that Cloud is kind of missing in terms of Smart Zone and Zone Director and Unleashed, is actually to be able to do application-based policies. So it does application recognition today, but not application-based policies, for adding that. Ability to do VLAN pooling for larger deployments. Adding PCI compliance to the platform as well. So if you're deploying into places like retail or anywhere that payments are taken using, for example, payment terminals, handheld payment terminals, then we added PC compliance to that. And here's a feature as well that comes up on my radar, reasonably often with Cloud as well, is the ability to actually be able to do tunneling like you can on a Smart Zone or you can on a Zone Director. So to actually be able to have an on-premise data plane and be able to tunnel traffic to that. So, the issue is at the moment is that all the management happens up in the cloud. It's all cloud hosted. So what this will do is to add the ability to actually have a local data plane. So it may be a multi-site deployment where they want to tunnel all the data back to their data center. So they want cloud managed, but they want to be able to tunnel the user traffic back to their data center to apply policies or whatever it may be, or centralized internet connectivity. So you'll be able to actually do that, deploy on-premise virtual data planes with it. And that's really for this year. It will be a kind of a beta feature, and it will be sort of fully productized and released in first half of 2021. And as I mentioned, MSP, there's lots more enhancements to come along there. ICX side, so a lot more additions. So we're going to add the ability to be a lot more granular on ICX switches with PoE config. One of the caveats, as you'll see in my last kind of slide on this, is that today, when you connect or hook up your ICX switch to cloud managed, you can't, well, you can access this CLI, but it's read only effectively. You can't make configuration changes via the CLI. So we're going to give you the ability in the next releases to actually be able to do changes via CLI, because we can't fit all of the functionality, configuration functionality into the into the cloud web UI. It would make it really complex. So sometimes you need to go to the actual ICX CLI and do some more advanced configurations there. So we'll give you that ability. Protected port config as well coming up, and the ability to swap a switch out and to basically swap over the configuration. So kind of like if you've got a failed switch, to easily be able to swap that out for a replacement switch. So just looking a bit like the unified management, we're going to see this in the demo, so I'll kind of go through this fairly quickly. But in cloud, you've got a lot more functionality than you have in Unleashed. It's much closer to what you get in the Smart Zone in terms of ICX management and monitoring. So what we've done is that the registration, the connectivity is just like an AP. So all you have to do is you add via the app or via the web interface, you just add the serial number of the switch. When that switch boots, it will go to our public registration service. It will discover the cloud service and the venue it belongs to and get automatically provisioned. So what you can do is to actually create a configuration profile for particular venues being locations. When the switch joins, it pulls down that configuration profile of that configuration and it joins and it's operational. So it's very, very easy to add switches to cloud, just like you've traditionally added APs to cloud as well. So you get a good deal of monitoring and visibility, so pretty similar to what you see in Smart Zone if you've ever played with that as well. So you get information about individuals, standalone switches or stacked switches as well, visibility about the clients connected in, and obviously your events and alarms. And then you can do more configuration in terms of what you currently can in Unleashed. So you can either do sort of switch level settings, or you can actually drill down to port level settings as well in there. So we'll take a look at those. And there's some basic troubleshooting tools as well. So I mentioned this is just covering that. Very, very easy to add and deploy your switches. And this is just some examples through the mobile app of actually sort of adding the switches in and so on. And just be aware that the app has been rebranded to CommScope as well, so you won't get these functionalities if you haven't updated your app. And weirdly, it doesn't for some reason, because I think it's now it's CommScope. It's Ruckus Cloud by CommScope rather than Ruckus Cloud. You won't get automatic notification of an app upgrade if you're running the old app. So if you're running the old app, just make sure that you've updated to the new CommScope Ruckus Cloud app to make sure you've got all this additional functionality for ICX stuff. So I'm not going to cover these because we're going to see this as we go through a demo. Unified global search. So if you're searching for a MAC address, for example, or an IP address, or username, that will work across both the ICX and the APs as well. So it is kind of unified from that perspective of event reporting, alarms, searching, and so on through the system. So single pane of glass for alarms, that's fine. So just some points of note there to finish up. As I mentioned, so you can't currently change ICX configuration. So hopefully that's going to be available before the end of this year, that you'll actually be able to in a CLI, rather than just doing it, using it for monitoring, you'll actually be able to do configuration changes. If you need to use the CLI, I'll show you where this is, but you need to go to the venue settings to see what the CLI password is. So when the switch joins cloud, it will actually get a CLI password pushed to it from cloud, so you can actually see that under the venue settings. And as I mentioned here, it's really meant for greenfield deployments. So when a switch connects to cloud, its configuration will be overwritten by the cloud venue configuration. So if you've got a kind of complex network configuration already deployed on your switches with lots of advanced configurations, that's all going to get wiped. So just be aware, it is really meant for greenfield deployments, not for taking an existing deployment and hooking those switches up. So certainly not without some care and careful planning. As with all switches, if you do want to do stacks, so you can form stacks within the web interface of cloud, you need to make sure that you have 10 gig ports, so 10 gig uplink or stacking ports enabled. So depending on the switch, you may have to buy additional licensing for those. And another thing is that sometimes, and we've been working on sort of optimizing this as well, but sometimes some of the status and configuration changes may take a little while to display in the UI. it's a pretty, the way the cloud solution is built in terms of scalability, it's supporting, hundreds of thousands of switches and access points potentially. So those updates all of them aren't in real time. So just be aware there can be sometimes a little bit of a lag if you're making things like configuration changes before they actually show up. Cloud Bomb's pretty straightforward. It's just licensing. So you buy the APs, you buy the cloud license for the AP. So that's pretty straightforward. You can buy, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year subscription licenses for the APs. Similarly for the switches as well, you buy a license for the switches as well. Do note, however, for the APs, it's a single license. Doesn't matter what type of, generally what type of AP it is, but for switches, it's very specific. It's a sorry, that's the AP number there. Sorry, for APs, this is the license number for AP licenses. It's just a single license SKU, irrespective of the type of AP. For switches, it's slightly different, and that all kind of ties back to the support and the complexity of the switches themselves. If you're deploying an 8-port switch, then that's a lot less complex and costs a lot less in terms of that sort of insurance premium for lifetime warranty than a 7650 would, for example, or a 48-port 7150Z. So there are actually individual SKUs. So just be aware of that when you're doing the ICX licenses for cloud. They are different SKUs. And cloud support is actually included, so you don't need to buy additional support. So both for the APs and for switching, support is actually included within your subscription. So just to finish up on this section, I'm not running too far behind, which is good. I'm glad I removed about 40 slides from this presentation. You can check out the partner portal for these. So all the latest sort of partner promotions are actually on there, but there's quite a few of them. So whether you're looking at, looking at deploying Unleashed networks, you're looking at deploying some 7150s, or some new 7150s, perhaps multi-gig with some of our Wi-Fi 6 APs, or you're doing a trade up for Zone Director, which is pretty popular at the moment. Different promotions there. So take a look at those on the partner portal. They're under the marketing center, and it's got most of these have actually got like a little sort of data sheet for them, or flyer that you can download to get the details of them, and obviously contact your Purdicom account manager for pricing of those different deals there. Right, so I'll take a quick pause, see if there are any questions that need answering. Let's have a look here. No open questions. Okay, I've explained it all really very well, or you already know it all, or worse than that, you've all fallen asleep. Hopefully not that one. So, okay, so it looks like no questions. Let me carry on. Okay, so the second part is all about demonstration, which is hopefully going to be a little bit more interesting. We're looking at PowerPoint slides. Unfortunately, you're going to still hear me rambling on in the background, but hopefully you'll find it a bit more interesting. So hopefully we'll be finished around about 11:30. There's a fair bit to cover here. I'm not going to go into too much detail. So whilst I'm going to look at sort of a quick tour of Unleashed and a quick tour of cloud. So say in there, so predominantly monitoring within the Unleashed product, and then the sort of management and provisioning within cloud. It says my internet connection is unstable. Can you hear me okay still, Sam?
We did lose you briefly, but you're loud and clear now.
Okay. So so be a quick tour, just if you're not familiar with one or the other products. So if you are, kind of bear with it. The main point is just to look at the VI6 management, but just take it a bit more into that, and then finish off with a bit about cloud reporting and analytics as well, a quick demo of that. So the first part of this, rather than actually doing this live, this is setting up an Unleashed network. So if you're new to Unleashed, never set one up before, it's a very straight process. You plug in your Unleashed AP, you connect to it, and then you go through this wizard. So it's very, very straightforward. I guess the only part from this initial page here that you might kind of be interested in. So you've got different methods of installing Unleashed. So it can be typical install, which is just, it's just a wireless network with switches in it. You can install Unleashed in what we call gateway mode, which is where an AP effectively becomes the gateway to your outbound connectivity. So all your client traffic goes through that gateway. So there may be specific use cases where you actually want to deploy Unleashed in gateway mode, and it basically acts as a NAT, a NATing device to pass all traffic out to the internet or wherever it happens to be going. So we do have some customers using that gateway mode, but typically you'll be doing a typical sort of install. UMM, as I mentioned, is the multi-site manager. So that's an overlay sort of a manager of Unleashed Network. So it is a bolt-on product, a separate virtual machine, which requires licensing. So if you're looking after, say, sort of like an academy trust or a school trust of some sort, and they've got 30 schools they look after, and they're actually wanting to deploy Unleashed across all those schools, you may want to actually look at overlaying that with Unleashed Multi-Site Manager, because it'll actually give you good visibility, the ability to actually provision stuff automatically and do configuration changes from a single interface. So rather than having to go to each Unleashed network to do those changes, you can actually do it from one place, to do firmware updates and all that sort of stuff as well, get reporting and event management as well in one place. So if you're doing a large multi-site deployment, you may actually be interested in UMM. At this point, you also get the option of being able to upgrade the firmware as well. So it may be that your APs have come out of stock and they've got 200.7 loaded on them. You want to be running 200.9, so you can just download the latest firmware from the support site and do the upgrade from here, and that will be pushed out to the APs when they join. Second part of it is just giving your Unleashed network a name. So typically you give it a unique name for each site and set your country code and enable meshing if you want to. Then you do your IP settings. So this is the IP settings just for standard deployment there. So it could be manual or DHCP. If you're using gateway mode, then as you see, it's ticked here. You've got a few sort of additional bits of information to add there if you're actually doing it, because you've got to set up your sort of your NAT DHCP services there as well. And then it allows you to create your first wireless LAN. So whatever wireless LAN, add some WPA to it. So if you want to use different types of wireless LAN, different types of security and so on, you can obviously do that once you finish the provisioning. But you do need to set up some sort of basic wireless LAN as you go through the wizard. Then you set up the admin username and password. It does also support now as 200.9. You can use external admins as well if you want to. So if you want to authenticate users via AD, for example, you can do that. And you have this option for password recovery as well. So you can basically put in some security questions with answers in case the main admin password is lost, then you can actually recover that. And then the last stage is just showing you confirmation of the details that you configure and you're finished. And then it will basically go off. It takes a couple of minutes. The AP will reboot. It will build the Unleashed network. And then all you need to do is to just simply add the other APs to the physical network, to your switch network. They'll discover the master AP and get provisioned and up and running. So very, very simple to actually deploy it. And then just allows you to connect back to the once it's done, connect back to the management page. It's very, very straightforward. As it says there, about 7 minutes is typically what it takes to actually get kind of started to the point you can add APs and rolling out the rest of the network. Right, so let me take a look now onto the demo. So let me stop sharing that screen. Right, okay. So I've cut out that 7 minute cycle. So whilst I could have done that sort of Unleashed provisioning live, it would have taken a bit of time. So I'd rather concentrate on the important bit. So this is Unleashed. Let's just get a bit more screen space there. So when I went through the setup, I didn't set up the login password recovery, so I could actually do that now if I wanted to. So I'm just being reminded. So I'll skip that, don't need to do it now. So if you're not familiar with Unleashed, very, very simple. So sort of top right here, you've got some information. So you've got the system name, how long the system's been up for, who you logged in as, and online help there as well. So pretty straightforward and fairly consistent with all our other products. Then basically you've got these rows here. So these are six rows of just different sort of context in the system. So at the top here, you've got information about internet connectivity. So this is the master's view of what is internet connectivity is. So you can see here it's actually via port 5. I'm using an H510 as my master. So even our very most sort of entry level of products can be an Unleashed master there. So it's connected up via its back port to the network, port 5 there. It's got an IP, it's got gateway, DNS, and its internet connection is okay. So just a bit of a status in terms of its internet connectivity. Then you've got Wi-Fi network. So you can see here on the right that the status. So you've got a total of 1 network configured. Got one which is working and none which is currently disabled. And you can just click here. You can either go to the chevron at the end, or you can click anywhere in it to get some information. You see as well under Wi-Fi networks and clients, you also get a little bit of a history of traffic as well for the last hour here. So you can just see kind of overall across the network, history of traffic and history of number of clients connected to the network as well. So just a sort of useful little view in this high level. If I click on that to open it up, and it opens up a context. So what I can actually see here is I can see overall, I've got my summary of all my networks. I've only currently got one, but I can see how many clients and traffic over time. And this is actually showing there things, for example, like clients connected. It's showing what their signal strength is like. So if I've got, I had 100 clients connected on here, I might have, 10 of them have got poor signal strength. So, they'd kind of show up as that little colored sort of maroon bar above here as well. So, get a nice kind of like visual display of, overall what sort of signal status or connection quality your clients have, and then the traffic for the last hour. So you can go up to the last 12 hours unleashed. So it's kind of limited in terms of a reporting time, but for most of the customers in this particular market, this is more than sufficient. And you can do things, for example, like use, you can send information via syslog if you want to. You can also do things to use like radius accounting. So I was trying to think of what it was. Use radius accounting on the wireless LAN to send things like the amount of traffic sent per client and stuff like that, and create your own graphs from that if you wanted to, or SNMP. So different ways that you can pull information if you want to. I can also see here overall on the system of clients that are connected. So I've only got one client connected here. And is I can connect on that client, and I can do things like show the details for that particular client. So some information about its signal strength, some details about the host name, what vendor if that is, what OS it's running as well, signal strength there over time, what radio it's connected to, what VLAN and so on, how long it's been connected for. So, some useful information about clients. What I can do as well, I can do things like mark them as favorites. So if there are particular clients that I want to keep my eye on, I can actually mark those as favorites there. I can also do troubleshooting on the client. So this is, if you're familiar in the Smart Zone, this actually gives you the visual connection diagnostics trace. What I can do is to actually start that on a client. So if I've got a client that's having connection issues, what I can actually do is to start that running. And I've just woken my iPad up there. So sorry, my iPhone up there. So you can actually see there that the client has gone through. So the client's gone through, so he's de-auth. So I've actually woken up out of sleep. It's kind of de-authenticated from the wireless network, then reconnected to the wireless network and gone through. I'm just using the pre-shared key, so gone through the four-way handshake. So you can kind of see where the communication is taking part between the client device and the access point and Unleashed. And if it was getting a new IP address, which it's not because it was already connected, or using an external radius server for .1x, you'll actually see all those connection flows. So very, very useful troubleshooting tool in terms of diagnosing client connection failures. Stop that there. And under more, I can do things like I can run a speed test from that client, or I can block the client as well. So if I want to create like a layer 2 MAC ACL, I can block that client from connecting. So that's all sensitive to the overall sort of view. And if I had multiple networks here like this one, I can actually click on a particular network to get the view for that particular network as well. So pretty easy to kind of drill down and either be sort of get the overall network view, or just individual wireless networks there as well. In terms of clients, it's pretty well what I've just shown you anyway. So this will give you the list of all clients, and you can do the troubleshooting tool, select them, show more details on those clients and so on. So nothing really there to cover of particular interest. Access points. So these are access points. So again, these like switches will join typically automatically to the Unleashed master and become members of that Unleashed network. So again, I can see overall view across all the access points that are connected, or I can look at individual access points. So if I click on the individual access points, I can see information about the clients there. So I can see which clients are connected. I can show which wireless LANs are actually running on this particular access point. As you see, it's presented in a very nice, simple, intuitive way as well. There's really no kind of complexities here. Get information about the system there as well. Show events and alarms. So all pretty intuitive, all in one place, very, very easy to kind of drill down, see the top level stats again, a bit like we saw above. So I can see this on a per AP basis as well if I want to. Pretty straightforward there. And then the important one for this is the switch category that's been added. So here's where I can see my switches, again, broken down into across all of my switches and across individual switches. So across all switches, it gives me just a high level summary of what the total port count is, how many ports are up, what the total PoE budget is, what the used PoE budget across all those switches in, and any alarms and events across there as well. So not much going on there, I don't think. All pretty quiet and stable, which is good. If I select an individual switch, then I'll get a bit more information about that. So I'm looking specifically at this switch now. So I get a little legend, like you see, if you ever looked at the Smart Zone, you get this little legend here. So you can pop over here and it'll actually show you what those different colors and icons mean on the port. So for example here, this means that it's providing PoE, and with a little flash in it means that it's providing PoE, but it's got a Ruckus AP connected to it. And below you've got the list of ports, so you can see the different ports and their status as well. So various columns here, see some information about the ports, things like PoE usage, any VLAN tags that are being used there as well. And if I select a port, that will kind of automatically highlight it for me in this particular list. So if I click on a port here, it'll actually automatically highlight it, so I know which port I'm kind of dealing with there. So that's the information for that port, so I can see how much PoE power has been allocated to this particular port and how much it's actually using. So only 3.6 watts out of 30 watts that's been allocated to it, so I could do some adjustment there. And then I've got some traffic trends over time as well, so per port and per switching at traffic trends, and I can see here as well the LLDP neighbors. So a reasonable amount of information on there. Let me just close that one up and get to the bottom of that. So I can also see the health of the switch as well. So I can see CPU utilization, memory utilization over time, and I can also see status of the power supplies and the temperatures of the slots in the switch itself. And then we just got the alarms and the events that I saw at the bottom there as well. So some good information on there, but there's not really much configuration you can do. So all I can do here currently today is I can upgrade the switch, I can back up or restore a configuration to it. So fairly basic today, but that will be improved in forthcoming releases. If I edit the switch, all that's going to do is let me change the name. So nothing too great there. And to add new switches, so new switches should be discovered automatically. What will happen is that they'll actually pop up. So as you add ICX switches to a network, they'll automatically pop up and be shown here, and you have to approve them. So a bit like an AP, you can have approval so that a switch can't just join the Unleashed network. It has to be approved. If you've got a switch connected, like in my case, because it's behind another part of the network, it didn't automatically get discovered. What you can do is just to manually add a switch. So you can put the IP address of the switch in and give it the switch's admin name and password, and then it will pop up here and become managed by the Unleashed network. So it'll take a few minutes to get sort of provisioned and up and running. But hopefully some kind of good information in terms of a good start in being able to get visibility of those switches. It is only meant for small scale stuff. Unleashed, it may grow over time, but currently, as I said, it is 8 switches maximum of any switch in the product family. But typically, it's going to be the 7150 product family that you actually deploy with Unleashed in most cases. So just to finish up on Unleashed, there is a lot more configuration in here. I mean, it is a pretty comprehensive product. It is based on our Zone Director code. So, there's kind of system information. As mentioned, you can do things like have email servers for notifications, SMS servers for notification, for providing things like guest passes as well could be set there. External syslog servers are supported. So you can try, so suppose supports role-based access, so you can create role-based access based on the user's group, for example. Create local users, supports meshing, various other services. So it does work with CloudPath as well, but you'll see services like creating .1x networks, setting up your AAA servers, access controls, application and recognition. You have things like device-based policies as well. Bonjour gateway on here, so no Bonjour fencing. Bonjour fencing is coming to cloud, but I haven't seen this for Unleashed. Dynamic pre-shared keys, as I mentioned, you've got that new shared dynamic pre-shared key features, some nice guest access services, some more comprehensive radio controls as well if you want to. You want to play with the kind of knobs there, use background scanning or channel fly. You want to play with sort of adjacent radio thresholds for client load balancing or enabled change of threshold on your band balancing, that sort of stuff. You can do that here. You've got the WIPs, which is basically doing sort of intrusion detection and prevention, so you can actually actively protect the network from malicious rogues. It's not really advisable to do that, but certainly getting reporting on rogue devices, so you can see different Wi-Fi devices and whether they're malicious AP, they're on the same network advertising the same SSID or the same MAC address, the same BSSID effectively, ad hoc APs and so on. So so it's got some good WIPs in there. We've got the URL filtering we added, and then Wi-Fi calling, and then just general administration, which is upgrades to the system, backup and restoring, and adding a certificate if you want to have a valid HTTPS certificate, so you don't get the not secure warning up here or when you're in the web interface or using the portals. So that's an overview of Unleashed and the ICX management. So any questions on that one, Sam?
Nope.
Got a very good audience
today. Comprehensive overview, Eddie.
Sorry?
Another comprehensive overview.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to cloud. How are we doing for time? 11:14. Yeah, hopefully we're doing okay there. I'm going as fast as I can, as you can tell by how fast I'm talking. So cloud, if you're not familiar, this is what it looks like from when you log into the cloud product. You see here I'm in the EU region. I could swap to a different region here if I wanted to, but obviously I'm EU hosted here. Again, sort of information about the system, who's logged in, online help here, any alarms across the system as well. Remember, the alarms are unified as well, so they'll be for both switching and APs. On the left-hand side, we've got a quick search. So if I'm looking for a particular device, for example, whether that's a wired device, a wireless device, it will actually pull that up so you can see there I've got an AP, which is actually called, this is R510. I'm not sure what else I've really got on here. Let's have a look. Let's have a look, see if I've got some anything of mine. That's hit a lot of hits, but basically you can see here through the search, it kind of gives you a context results. So it gives you, it will give you clients, it will give you APs, it will give you historical clients as well. So it kind of puts into different context results of that. So that's a bit of a short one. I don't know if I've got anything called Eddie in there. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, so a few less come up there. But I've got two clients that are connected that have got Eddie in there. So I've got my iPad Mini and my iPad there that are connected, so I can see details about where they're connected. And I can also see a bunch of events related to those as well. So nice context search, and that's that's applicable both to Wi-Fi and wired networking. Then you've got your menu context down here, so we're going to go through those. Let's start off with the dashboard view. So you have this map view, so I say it's ideal for multi-sites, and the color of each venue. So a venue is a location, so you see this term here, venue. So venue is effectively a location. You may only have one venue, like I've got here in my home network set up, but if I go over that, it shows you how many Wi-Fi and switch devices and how many clients are connected. And this will change depending on the actual status of a particular site. So if there's something that's kind of flagged as a condition, but maybe there's kind of connection failures or something happening, you may get temporarily degraded. If it's critical because you've got APs or switches down, it will go red, for example. So this actually shows you the status of a particular site. Across the top here, we can see we've just got one venue. So all of these across the top here, the rings are actually little little pie charts. So if, for example, in the Wi-Fi one here, if I had one AP down, then part of this would change, a segment list would change to red to show there's an AP down, and obviously that kind of flags to you very visually that there's an issue. So whether it's venues or networking devices, that actually changes to kind of reflect the service operational state. And what I can actually do is go directly, for example, to venues. If I click on that, it will take me to the venues context and a list of venues there. Or, if I want to, it will take me to a list of access points or switches or clients from here as well. So a nice little summary status across the whole estate this is, because I may have multiple venues here with different numbers of APs and clients and so on connected. This is kind of giving you the overall view across the whole estate of deployments, and then you can drill down to get individual venues if you want to. Very easy to add new venues, so I'll go through that in a minute, or new network devices. So if I want to add a switch or an AP, very simple. All I need to do is specify which venue it belongs to. I've only got my single venue, put in its serial number, don't know what it is, I'm not actually going to add it. And is it a standalone switch, or does it belong to a stack that's already existing in here? So you can either add it as a standalone switch or add it as a member into an existing stack, and give the switch a name as well if you want to. So pretty easy to actually add that. And what that does is when you do that, whether you do that for an AP or for a switch, and very similar process. What it does is to actually populate the public registrar service that we run with that detail. So when the switch or the AP boots, it'll automatically connect to this particular, it'll be this particular cloud instance stroke venue, be pushed into there and inherit the configuration. So very, very easy. You basically get a new switch, you basically add the switch or the AP, and you can do that in the app as well. So in the app, for example, you can scan the barcode for the serial number. It gets added to public registrar service. When you power up that device, assuming that you've already kind of done some configuration in your venue and added some wireless LANs, added a switch profile as well, or a switch configuration template, then they'll automatically get configured when they join that venue as well. So nice and easy in terms of provisioning. So if I just add a venue, if I wanted to add a new site, maybe call this Ruckus UK HQ, for example. Give it a description. Where is it? Triangle. Can't remember what the exact road is on, somewhere on Eskdale Road. So that's right. That'll do what it is there. Maybe also go to the venue, add a floor plan. So let's just create that new venue. So I've got currently no floor plans in here, so I can add one in. So pretty straightforward. So I'll call it ground floor. So floor number 0 is fine. Upload the image. Stick that one in there. That'll do. Oh, yeah, it's fair. So that's the floor plan gone in. Okay, so that's floor planning. So it's pretty well as straightforward as it gets to add a new location, new venue. What I could do, so if there are any existing APs, for an existing venue, they'll actually just show up here, or switches, so you can drag and drop them in here, or you can add an AP or a switch from here. So for new devices you're adding, so it depends on whether it's a new venue that you're just provisioning, setting up, whether you have any devices to add or not. If there are any devices, then actually show up here, and you can just drag and drop where they actually appear. And what you actually have is you've got multiple floor plans. You'll have a gallery, so you can select between the different floor plans. So got a view here of where this particular venue is here. So it's just using Google Maps. But then you've got some venue-wide settings. So what you can actually do is to configure everything sort of venue-wide, and then you can override settings. So if you want to override, for example, on a particular AP, what wireless LANs it's broadcasting, or particular configuration for an AP in terms of its port configuration, then you can override the venue settings. But typically, what you're going to do is to set the settings at the venue. So you may edit some of the radio settings here, so you see what channels are available. Maybe I want to use channel fly on the 5 GHz radio. How often I want to use the scan. Maybe I want to use no bigger than 40 MHz channels on there, for example, and I don't want to use these channels over here. So it's pretty easy to add and edit those on a per venue basis or per AP basis. Cellular radios for the M510, so if you're using the M510 for cellular data backhaul, you can set up parameters there for that. If you want to set up different port settings for different types of, so like H510, you can set up ports with different functions there. Set it to a general port, for example, what VLAN membership it's got as well, so you can set up the ports for different AP members across there. Turn on the syslog server, so you can have different syslog server per venue. You can have different spot location services per venue as well. And if you want to, you can do things like turn the, if you had a model, you can actually turn the LEDs off. So just pick one of those, for example. So you can turn the LEDs off on the APs as well if you want to there. And this last part here is the for the venue. It's the switch profile or switch template, if you want to call it that. So you can actually create a template here or use an existing template. I'll look at that when we go down to switch configuration. So I've currently got one created here, a switch profile. So that's effectively what configuration the switch will inherit when it actually joins the venue. And what you can also see here, this is where I mentioned where if you go to the venue, you can see what password. So there's not one set because this is a new venue. There's no switches in here. Let me just cancel this one and go to my venue, because you'll actually see that. So let's just go to my venue and show you that. So you'll actually see here, if I want to do CLI management of the switch, I would log in, I'll SSH to the switch using admin as the username, and then I can actually copy this password here to actually log in as a password to that switch. But remember, I can't really do any CLI changes today. It's really just monitoring of the switch, that you can actually do in the CLI today. So, but that's where you find the actual the settings for it if you want to. In this live venue, so now we've moved down to the venue, just check actually, just go back to venues, see if there's anything else. So just sort of high level in the venues, you can see wherever the location is, how many Wi-Fi networks, how many APs, how many switches are connected, how many clients, and how many Wi-Fi clients there are connected. And what you can do is, if there's any additional rows, you can click that little button to add rows here. And you can also do things like add the DHCP service profile here as well, or add new venues. So actually look into this venue. This is where we see the floor plan. So you can see here I've got four APs running, one switch running. Again, so if I had any other devices that hadn't been placed, they'd show up here in the right-hand side. So I can see the devices placed. I've got 3 APs here downstairs, and I've got the switch here in my little study where I am. And then on the first floor, I've got another AP, which is actually a meshed AP up here. So just so I can have mesh enabled and see kind of mesh information as well there. So that's kind of a venue, and I can see information about a venue here in terms of things like the traffic volumes and the PO utilization as well. So I can see that for switching, or I can see Wi-Fi information here as well. So traffic volumes, clients, and applications as well across the switches. So you can kind of chop and change between those two views, what you want to see on the per venue basis. So I think that kind of covers that. So across the venue, I can see clients connected. So I've got 32 clients connected there. So I can see all of those clients that are actually kind of connected, and then drill down to the clients, but we'll take a look at those under users. You can see your networking devices. So I can see by Wi-Fi network. So these are my APs, and I can click on any of those APs to drill down. I can also click on switches and see my switches that are in this particular venue, and click on the switch to get more detail about it as well there. So pretty intuitive, and say everything's kind of unified. Both the Wi-Fi and the switching is all in one place. You don't have to go to different places to find it. And then we've got our wireless networks and events as well across there. So go to networking devices. So this is kind of like the subsection. So I can see across here, we've got all of my APs. I can see meshed APs, and also create AP groups to differentiate services. If I click on a particular AP, then that will take me down to more details about that particular AP. So I can see a picture of the AP, some properties of the AP. I can show a few more properties of that AP. So again, for example, if I want to CLI to the AP for some reason to get some debug info or whatever else, I can actually see what the CLI password for the actual AP is here under the AP context. So for the switches, it's venue-wide. For the APs, it's individual. So information about the APs, traffic, and client counts over time as well. So you can see that, so quite nice and intuitive. And now I'm on a specific AP, I can drill down and see which clients are actually on this particular AP, and then drill down to get information about those particular clients. I can see which wireless networks are active on this particular AP as well. So it's very, very, very kind of intuitive in terms of its drill down. So if I just go back to networking devices, and the one I'm interested in is my switching. So I've got my switch here and some high-level information about it. And you can do stacking from here. So you can not only can you add a new switch to an existing stack, you can actually select multiple switches and create a stack for those switches from here as well. And if you're provisioning, just like with APs, if you're provisioning a large number of switches or a large number of APs, you can actually import the serial numbers and the details from a file. So rather than you having to click and add one, and the details for each one, you can actually create spreadsheet and import all the details in one go, rather than doing it if you're deploying 60 APs and 20 switches, well, it's going to be take a long time if you're adding each one individually. So better to actually import those. So I click on this switch here. You can see here a bit of detail. So 16 ports in total. We're looking good there. 10 ports are connected. So this is my switch. So the other switch I've shown you was one connected to my Unleash network, which only had 3 ports. This one's actually got 16 ports and 10 ports that are active. Got 8 clients connected to it at the moment, so I can click on that to take me down to the clients. But we'll look at that. What the PO utilization? So it's got several APs hanging off of it, no alarms, and then a bit more detail on that venue as well. Oh, sorry, on this switch as well. So a bit more information about the particular switch here as well, if I want to see it. Down here, I've got different views. So I've got the panel view. So you can see here, panel switches. So I can go over these, and it pops up, gives a bit more information about each of those ports. And obviously, you can do things like name the ports as well if you want to. I can look at the ports list here. So specifically look at ports rather than looking at that panel view. or I can look at routed interfaces. So if you're doing, if you're using layer 3 firmware, I haven't got it here, but you could, for example, if you've got any kind of routes on there, if you're using ACLs as well, which is part of the layer 3 software, then you'll be able to see that information there as well. And you can also add virtual interfaces as well, VEs as we add them. So if you're having multiple VLANs and different virtual interfaces and routing between them, then you can add those there as well. So reasonable amount of configuration. Has it? Don't know. Oh, apparently it has. Okay, let me log back in. Kind of quite sure why my session expired. I didn't know there was a maximum session expiry time, but maybe it's because it's been logged in for quite some time. Okay, so I'll just go back to my switch. Okay, so I think I just finished up there, so you can see that. There's also a rear panel view as well, so you can just see effectively what slots. So if you've got a switch, this is just 12-port switch with a power supply, so there's not really much to talk about there. It's got no fans in it, but obviously if you had fans and multiple power supplies, you'll be able to see some detail on those as well. I can see where this particular device is located, so this is this switch here. And then I can see some switch status, so uptime, and then see traffic as well and resource utilization on the switch, so CPU and memory utilization on the switch there as well. And I can click on here, look at the clients, so I can see the different clients, and then click on those to get a little bit more detail about those. And if I was, for example, using 802.1x, I'd also be able to see the username on there, and then events related to this particular switch as well. So again, pretty easy to kind of drill down. If I look at the ports, for example, then I can see more details about the ports here. So I can click on a particular port there, and as well as getting details, I can obviously reorder these in different headers, so ascending or descending order based on columns. I can search them, look for specific VLANs, for example, here, or sort by specific VLANs or port status. And if I want to, I can also edit the port here. So I can disable ports. I can change the PoE classes and the PoE priority. If I wanted to disable LLDP, change the port speed here as well, so pretty easy to do that, or across a number of ports if I wanted to, change spanning tree parameters, and also add VLANs here to the port if I want to. So, reasonable amount of sort of configuration per port configuration that I can do here. Let me just go back to, was it panel? Right, I think that's what I wanted to look at actually, so that's fine. Yep, so covering the ports. Nothing else there. So you can see as well from LLDP what the connected device name is. If it's using LLDP, you'll get information of the PoE usage there as well as a port speed. So good information there. Not too worried about wireless networks. What I was going to look at is the switch configuration. So these are effectively the templates when a switch gets placed into a particular venue. It's the baseline configuration that it'll actually get. So if I just add a new configuration, so let's just call it new ICX venue, give it a description if I wanted to. So currently no VLANs, so what I could do is add some VLANs. So VLAN ID, let's go at 101. Call it management, for example. I could do DHCP snoop and ARP inspection if I wanted to on there. And then what you do is you add it per model, because obviously it's going to vary. So remember, these are the currently the only switch models supported, but if I pick one of those, and pick my C12P, for example, and then what I get is the graphic up for that, and then I can actually add, so I can add tagged or untagged VLANs in there. So I can tag that in there. There's an untagged port, so I can put those ports as untagged ports. And then I can also put for this particular VLAN what ports I actually want tagged on it. And you can see here that I can create multiple models. So part of this template, it's not just, I don't have to create a template per model. I can actually create multiple or do multiple models within the same template for that particular venue. And so I can see now the ports for tagged and untagged ports on that particular model. And then I just save that. And so when that's applied to a particular venue, what will actually happen is that the switches that join that venue will inherit that template configuration. I mean, if you want to, as you saw, you can go in on a per port basis and edit some of the ports and so on. I know one of the things we're planning on adding, like we're planning on adding on the Smart Zone as well, is a concept of port profiles as well. So the ability to actually create like a port profile that you can easily apply across multiple ports if you want to, rather than kind of selecting kind of multiple ports here and editing them that way. It's an easier way where you can apply more policies to a group of different ports using sort of like a template, effectively a port template. So I think that's coming up in the first half of next year. So users not too interested, events were not there. So the last part really is just to take a quick look at analytics. And so as I mentioned, the analytics is kind of split into two parts. So you've got the dashboard stroke analytics, which is all part of the sort of machine learning AI that we've created that is cloud-based. And you can subscribe to this for either smart zones or as part of a cloud deployment as well. So if you have new customers deploying cloud, for example, they'll automatically get 60 days of analytics information. And after that, they'll need to subscribe. Now, I think we're actually running a promo, but that'll actually run to the end of this year. So they might actually get more than 60 days on that current sort of promo, but they get analytics free up to the end of this year for every new subscription. The reporting part is there are a lot of canned reports here, and this is the bit that's actually built in for free. You actually get all of these reports, and I'll kind of run through these very briefly, but you get all of these different canned reports included in your cloud subscription. So it's only the dashboard and the analytics part, which is kind of the intelligent part. This is where the secret sauce. These are kind of pre-canned reports as opposed to really sort of analytics stuff. And that Data Explorer, which is where you can create custom reports and dashboards from all the sort of different elements that are learned. This is also part of the licensing for the dashboard and the analytics. So what I'm going to do is, you can see my home network is actually as clean as a whistle. I've got no incidents here or anything, so it'd be a pretty pointless demo. So let me just switch to this one here, which is actually one of our hosted ones that we have access to as demo systems. So we've got a bit more detail to actually play with here. So again, fairly standard layouts. You've got information about the user and help and stuff, and log out on the right-hand side here. Menu on the left-hand side here. And your starting point is the dashboard. So what this is doing is it's giving you this search bar, so you can search MAC address, you can search by host name or client device type, IP address, whatever it happens to be. You can search across different contexts in the system if you're looking specifically for a particular device. It's easy to actually do a search there. Then you've got this kind of summary across the systems that are reporting into the cloud analytics instance. How many clients, how much traffic, and so on here, just a scrolling count. Then the first part of this is we've got the incidents. So this is really where that sort of machine learning and AI comes into it, that part of it where we've got some patented technologies here. And what this is actually doing is it's looking across the systems that are reporting into it. So say you've got Ruckus Cloud and you've got 5 venues set up and you're using Ruckus Analytics, they'll actually be reporting information into the cloud analytics. And what that does is it analyzes that data and it creates what we call incidents. So they, as you can see, prioritize between P1 to P4. P1 obviously being the most severe type of incident. And what it's actually doing is it's not just taking some base information like there's clients having login failures. Maybe they're not getting a response from a Radius server, or they're not getting a response from a DHCP server. It takes in a lot of learning in terms of prioritizing these incidents. They're not all the same. So you may see, for example, you'll see sort of connection incidents down here in the left. Maybe prioritize P4, and similar incidents that are P3 or P2 that look very similar at high level, but actually they're using a lot of different metrics. It may be how many clients is it affecting, how many APs is it affecting, which wireless LANs is affecting, which client device types is it affecting, how long has it been going on for. So when it's creating the incidents, whilst they may at a high level look fairly similar by name, they actually take a lot more information into account when they're actually creating them. So each incident is very unique based on the parameters of that incident. It's not kind of like a bucket that says that, oh, we've got Radius failures. Okay, they're all P3 incidents. They may be P1, they may be P4. It really depends on a lot of parameters. So there's actually a lot of work going in the background into taking that information and churning it to actually come up with the proper incident level. So this in the middle here, this circle diagram, it looks a bit like a coronavirus thing, so fairly topical, I guess. But what this does, it's showing you, so in your case, it will be showing you your different venues, for example, but it's in our case here, this is mainly smart zone controllers hooked up to here. So on the outside, it's showing smart zone controllers, and then it drills down to, for example, domains and AP zones and individual AP groups and so on. So it's actually showing you, as you can kind of see that you've got different colored circles. So it may be something that's affecting an AP zone or an individual AP or a wireless LAN, for example, or a whole controller. So these diagrams actually kind of show you how deep that issue is. Is it kind of affecting the controller at a high level? As we see here on this outside ring is red, and that's because there's a load of critical P1 infrastructure network issues on this particular controller. We'll drill down and have a quick look at that in a second. But it very easily visually highlights what part of your network or what venues are being affected by particular incidents and what severity. So you can easily drill down into those ones that really matter. On the left-hand side, you've got a bit of history of the networks. You've got how many clients are impacted by actual different types of incidents there as well. And then the incidents are actually categorized into either connection events, performance events, or infrastructure events as well. So we kind of put them into different buckets depending on what part of the network they're actually affecting. If I scroll down this list here, I'll hover over one of them. It'll basically bring up a bit of information about each of these incidents here. So it's saying here that basically these controllers, so these P1 incidents, are to do with this controller sending an incorrect timestamp. So it looks like there's some issue setting with its time setting. And what it does is it's not just telling you about what the incident is, it's actually giving you some root cause analysis, and potentially, as we'll see, it will actually give you some potential remedies. So if we look at something maybe more like P3 performance coverage one, if I click on that, this is actually now taking me from the dashboard to the analytics and incidents context here. So at the top here, we've got some incident details. So it's a P3 incidents, and it's saying that clients have got a low received signal strength, and they're unusually high in this particular AP zone. What I can see on the right-hand side here are insights. So what the root cause analysis could be for that particular type of instance, and what the recommended actions are. So it's saying that the RSSI is unusually low. It could have several root causes. It may be due to behavior or design issues. So it may be under coverage or insufficient APs, or localized coverage holes, for example. It could be issues due to roaming with the clients, the client roaming behavior. Or if it's only affecting particular types of clients or OSs, it may be down to something to do with a supplicant on that particular client. And then it's giving you some information about how you may be able to remedy that. The long-term goal of this cloud analytics is to actually automatically remedy these issues for you. So what it does is it gives you a breakdown of what wireless LANs are affected, what OS types are affected. Is it just particularly one wireless LAN, one particular type of OS that's affected? Particular type of AP model, a particular software version, so particular radio. So it's nice and easy to actually see what's actually been impacted by this particular type of incident. You can see over time, this is the RSSI, so you can see here that there are 34% of clients have got bad signal strength. Average is 34%, 31% have got good, and this is just distribution of those actual client RSSIs there. So the nice thing here is what I can actually do is I can click on this view details, and it shows me what clients are actually impacted by this particular incident. And what I can do is I can drill down to a particular device then and get more information about it. So it's not a particularly good one, but due to time, I'm not going to look around for it. But it drills down and gives me more information about that particular client. Let me just pull out very quickly, see if this client's still connected, because it did actually have some more details about it. So unfortunately, I'm going to be having to wrap up, but very shortly. But this client here did have a bit more detail. Yeah, so I've got a bit more detail here in terms of these are all the events related to this particular client. Some information about the client in the top here, health summary, how long it's been connected to the networks, how long it's had good connection, average connection, poor connection. But along here, we can see here where we've got issues with client connectivity. So if I click on one of those, hey, look, it brings up a connection diagnosis display. So for that particular client, what I can actually see is that the client is having issues with DHCP discovery. So the DHCP, they're getting no response from the DHCP server. So that's why this client's having connection issues. So very, very easy to actually kind of drill down, get more information, debug about the particular client. I can see here actually when they roam, the roams are actually successful between the APs. I've got no red ones there. It's just having issues getting DHCP addresses, and that's kind of potentially having some effect on its connectivity. So very, very easy to drill down. There's also this overall health sort of dashboard here where you can set up custom SLAs as well. So you've got overall view of connection success and failures and attempts, how long it takes clients to connect to, client counts over time. But then you've got all these graphs here and these bar charts, which actually show you, for example, I've got an SLA set currently of 2 seconds for connection time. What I can actually see here over time is how many clients meet that SLA. So that's pretty useful there. And what about if I set the SLA to 1? I'm going to have less clients that actually meet that 1 second SLA. If I set it to 5 seconds, there'll be more clients that meet that SLA. So you can set these kind of custom SLAs for different events. So maybe looking at time it takes to connect, the client throughput, AP uptime, for example, as well. So this is like the dashboard view of it. And you can actually drill down. So if you're interested in performance, for example, you can get the performance specific metrics and SLAs there as well. So, client throughput, what do I actually want to set my client throughput to? I don't, I'm pretty low here, 2 megabits per second. How many, what percentage of my clients actually meet a 2 megabit per second SLA? So this is really, really powerful for looking at your network, what's going on, and making sure that the network is servicing those users properly. So, not really got time. We looked at a client troubleshooter anyway. The incidents you can drill down individually. There's a lot of reports in here, so you get the overview. So remember, analytics today don't encompass ICX switching, but they will do, I think, later this year. We'll be adding ICX switching to the analytics. But the reporting does already include switching. So you can see here, I've got an overview of controllers, connected access point switches. I've got this kind of utilization graph here where I can see, for example, what client OS is. So by clients and traffic, I can actually see over here. So further right and higher, there's more clients and more uses there. So quite a nice view there. Alarms, top clients by count, traffic. I can drill down and look at more details about the wired network. So I can pull out all these sort of CAN reports about the wired network, the wireless network. There is a lot of detail in these CAN reports. You can export the reports, you can filter them. So you can filter them by time and date. We store up to a year's worth of data in Ruckus Cloud for these reports. I can filter it out by a particular controller or venue or SSID or particular radio if I want to. So it's very, very powerful. And then if I want to, I can actually export those reports as well if I want to in CSV or PDF format. Also coming up is scheduling. So what you'll be able to do is to actually schedule these reports to be sent via email to you as well. So if there's certain reports you want sent, you'll be able to do that as well. And the other one on here as well, that you can set up comparison reports as well. So if you want to compare, particular behavior in terms of number of clients or airtime utilization over a period or two different periods, you can do comparison. It may be that you're going to implement some changes in the wireless LAN configuration. You want to compare how that affects your airtime utilization before and after. You can do that, for example. So very, very powerful is the cloud analytics. And at that point, I am going to stop talking and see if there are any questions. Lost a few participants. They obviously had enough of listening to me.
Yeah, there's no open questions, Eddie. Everything's covered.
No questions. Wow. Okay. Well, a lot covered there. I hope that's been pretty useful to you. So thanks very much for Purdycom for hosting this event and letting us run through this. And hopefully you found that that unified management, we're taking great steps there to make as per our sort of our mission statement from CommScope. Making networks simpler, simpler to deploy, simpler to manage. Helping to put more functionality together into one interface, just to kind of help your customers manage their networks and to troubleshoot their networks. So thanks very much for taking the time to join. Sorry it's run over a little bit, but I still have managed to finish just in time for you to be heading off to lunch shortly. If there's no further questions, or no questions, let alone further questions, I guess we will wrap it up there. Thanks once again. Have a good day.
Cheers, Eddie.